When you think of the happiest days of a person's life, or an NFL player's life, what are two dates that come to mind? For most people, the two happiest days are going to be the day that you got married and the day that you got drafted. When it comes to getting married, that is a celebration of your relationship. That is the symbol that you found your soulmate, and you're going to be together and go through life with your partner. All of your friends and your family are there, reuniting to celebrate you, and you're celebrating the love of your life. It's a moment that is years in the making, and it's a moment at the altar that you've thought about for years, waiting to find that special someone, and you finally did. And then, when it comes to getting drafted, that's a celebration of all your hard work. When you get drafted, it shows you were able to do this for a living. All the sacrifices you made, all of the hard work that you put in over the years, and everything that you've done up until this point was worth it. Because now, you are a player in the National Football League. You get to do this at the highest level possible. You are one of the best, and no one can take that away from you. You've etched your name into history. You're going to be making a lot of money, and you're going to be able to continue playing this favorite game of yours for a little bit longer. Both your wedding day and draft day are monumental days in your life, and I think that goes without saying. So what happens if you combine the two? What happens if a player gets drafted on the same day that he gets married? What happens if a player, after committing to their partner, commits to their team? Sounds like the best, most chaotic, and most memorable draft day ever, right? Well, I bring that up because this man that you've been watching this entire time is University of Kentucky quarterback Rick Norton. And in 1965, in preparation for the 1966 draft, that's exactly what happened, as the great collegiate quarterback said "I do" to both professional football and his partner on the same day at the same time in a story that deserves a deep dive roughly 60 years later. Because this is the story behind what has to be, considering the circumstances, the most memorable draft day experience by any player in the history of professional football, and the man who got married and got drafted on the same day. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL and the NFL draft with stories like this one. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place for you. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and grow this community of football lovers even more. And with that in mind, let's talk about the day that Rick's world was rocked. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand just how good the player in question was that got drafted, as in Kentucky quarterback Rick Norton. Apologies in advance for the lack of highlights. This is for two reasons. Number one, there is no footage available anywhere of Kentucky football in the 1960s, which isn't too surprising, seeing as they never made it to a bowl game with Norton at quarterback and didn't have any notable nationally televised games. And number two, Norton's career in professional football was less than stellar, but we'll get to that, and I didn't want to do lowlights for this, seeing as this is a happy story. Anyways, in the 1960s, there were a few quarterbacks in the country who were better than Norton, as the Wildcats had a top 40 offense under his watch in 1965. If you don't think that's impressive, remember that this is Kentucky that we're talking about, and the following year when he left, their offense ranked 104th out of 119 teams. Norton was so good that on multiple occasions, he had Kentucky ranked inside the top 10 of the AP poll, and guided them to a combined record of 11-9 over his final two seasons. Once again, if you're not impressed, Kentucky hadn't won more than 5 games in a season since Sputnik, so the fact that Norton was making Kentucky one of the better teams in the nation was impressive in its own right. In 1964, Norton led the SEC by throwing 9 touchdown passes and over 1,500 yards. This made him the first quarterback in Kentucky history to lead the conference in passing yards, as no one would accomplish that feat again until Tim Couch in 1997. He also became the first quarterback to ever finish a season as the conference leader in passing touchdowns, with that milestone once again not being accomplished until Tim Couch in 1997. And in 1965, Norton followed that up by improving in every category, improving in completion percentage, passing yards, and passing touchdowns. By the time Norton left the school, he had thrown for 4,514 yards and 26 touchdowns, finishing as the all-time leader in school history at the time in passing yards and passing touchdowns. For some perspective, prior to Norton, the record for passing yards was set by Jerry Woolham, who had 2,759, meaning that Norton had 64% more yards than second place all time. And prior to Norton, the school record for most career touchdown passes was 13, meaning that Norton doubled the record. Even if Norton did nothing but play the 1965 season, he still would have left Kentucky second all-time in passing touchdowns. Rick Norton wasn't just a good quarterback, he was a downright dominant one, and was not only named an AP First-Team All-American by a few publications in 1965, but was named a member of the University of Kentucky Hall of Fame due to his influence as one of the greatest players in Wildcat history. And after that 1965 season, where Norton finished 7th in the NCAA in passing yards and averaged over 16 yards per completion, ranking 2nd in the entire NCAA in that category, it was clear that not only was Norton going to get drafted, but he was going to get drafted relatively high. And there was one team in particular that needed his services and needed a quarterback, especially seeing as they were an expansion team who, quite literally, did not have a quarterback or any players on their roster for that matter. That was the Miami Dolphins, who were infatuated with the man. In a league where you needed a quarterback to win, seeing as the league had a lot of good ones with the likes of Joe Namath, Len Dawson, Darryl LaMonica, and John Hadle, Rick Norton seemed like that guy. In fact, the Dolphins were so in love with the man that they were rumored to be drafting him a week before the draft actually started, holding negotiations in secret. The Dolphins denied doing that, which makes sense if they would deny it, seeing as it's not allowed, but you get the idea. Especially at a time when the AFL and the NFL were two competing leagues, and drafting a player didn't guarantee the fact that he'd play for you, as you still had to convince him to play for your team over the team in the other league, the Dolphins were going to do everything to make sure that Rick Norton was their guy and their signal caller of the future. And so, on November 27th, 1965, it officially happened. After his stellar career at Kentucky, Rick Norton was drafted 2nd overall by the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins had the first 2 picks in the draft that year, getting that perk because they were an expansion team. And after taking Jim Grabowski 1st overall, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, they took Rick Norton 2nd. So you'd figure that's exciting enough of a day, right? Rick Norton gets to accomplish his dream of playing professional football at the next level, and gets to continue playing the game he loves, and gets to make some good money while doing so. Well, amazingly enough, not quite. Because while the AFL draft was taking place, that same day, on November 27th, 1965, Rick Norton was getting married. Norton was following along with the draft and getting phone calls, and after getting drafted early in the morning, he wed the love of his life, Judith Ann Helmers, a junior from Kentucky, just like Rick was from Kentucky. We don't know whether they met in college or met beforehand, but either way, the two of them wed that day at the Newman Center, which was the chapel on campus. And this wasn't a quiet wedding. Many people attended this one, including his family and his teammates, who were at this wedding while also trying to figure out where they were going in the NFL or the AFL, since both drafts took place that day, meaning that just about everything was happening on this day in Lexington. But what might be most impressive about this wedding is the fact that Rick Norton was not nervous for 1 second. First dance, exchanging of vows, committing a marriage to someone for the rest of your life, and playing the waiting game in terms of where you're going to not only play football, but live the next stage of your life, and he was completely unfazed by all of it. It was just a regular old day. As one advisor said on him, Rick is the calmest boy I know. And I think calm would be putting it lightly, because he was unmoved with 2 of the biggest moments of his life colliding with each other, even though I think most people would be a nervous wreck in that spot. And there is a photograph of Norton and his wife from this wedding, both of whom are now deceased, which, for some reason, I kid you not, you can buy on eBay right now for $25. I don't know why this is on eBay, but then again, just about everything is on eBay, so this really shouldn't surprise me as much as it does. Unfortunately, as you can probably tell from the lack of highlights, as successful as this day was for Norton, he was super unsuccessful at the next level, to the point where he is one of the biggest busts in the history of the sport. There's a reason the Dolphins had to draft a quarterback in the first round just 2 years later in 1968, which worked out much better with Bob Greasy, because Norton was that bad. In his 4 seasons with the Dolphins, he started 11 games and won just one of them, finishing his career in Miami with a passer rating of 28.1, which is worse if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. And remember, that's over the course of an entire career. That is a substantial sample size. Not a game or anything like that, an entire career. Norton finished his time in Miami with 6 touchdown passes and 30 interceptions. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say that a touchdown to interception ratio of 1-5 is downright abysmal. For some perspective on how bad Norton was in Miami, hence the lack of highlights and the tons of action shots I cut off early because we threw the ball to the other team, since again, this is a happy story, there were 109 quarterbacks in NFL and AFL history at the time to attempt at least 320 passes. Of those 109 quarterbacks, Norton ranks, quite literally, 109th in passer rating. I've charted them all here, and not only is Norton last, but quite frankly, it's not even close. He's one of just 4 quarterbacks to attempt that many passes and have a passer rating below 40, and he's the only one below 35. He's in the 20s. The man is truly in a league of his own in the worst way possible. And going even further, of the 476 quarterbacks in NFL and AFL and AAFC history to throw at least 320 passes from the creation of the NFL in 1920 to today, Norton ranks dead last, ranking 476th in career passer rating. Long way of saying that the lack of actual highlights in this video was not for a lack of trying. He didn't give me a lot to work with. Yeah, this man was not a good quarterback, but he had a day to remember with the draft that I'm not sure too many people can say they've had. To get drafted is a heck of an accomplishment and is a celebration of your skill and your career. To get married is a heck of an accomplishment and a celebration of life and love. To have both happen at the same exact time, I'm not sure we're ever going to see something like that happen again. Because on this day, November of 1965, with the second pick in the AFL draft, you may kiss the bride. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.